All right, everybody, welcome. Come on in. Good to see you. It's been over a week. And welcome to everybody who is new. Please feel free to come in and say hi. I'll do official introductions at 5. All right, is Robin going to be first? Yes. Hello from the Berkshires heading down to the city. Robin, glad that you could make it. Pete, welcome back, and hi from sunny San Francisco. Thank you, Pete. Really excited to hear that you are coming to New York this fall. All right, we're at 5, so I'll do official introductions and then we'll get going. Welcome, everybody, to the People, Places, and Plants of Gowanus. We are, as always, thrilled to have you here, and I'm thrilled to be back with you after a week of research and house cleaning. Tonight's talk is going to be led by artist and photographer Mishka Driscozy. As always, our insiders, our beloved insiders, are here with us and all of these programs for a virtual subscription fee of $10. We now have a $15 price point if you want to do in-person in New York and virtual, but we are keeping virtual in perpetuity. Happy to say that. Also, Mishka has given us a 20% off coupon on any of his books when you order from Unnatural Kingdom with the promo code UNTAPGowanus21, which I have in the chat. I'll put in the chat at the end of the presentation as well. And as always, please say hello. I know that you guys are doing that as you guys are still coming in. So Pete from San Francisco, hello. Tom from Atlanta, hello. Christopher from Staten Island. Joe from London, good to see you. Sylvia from Woodside, Queens. Nancy in Tuckahoe. I see Eileen is typing, but welcome to all. And Mishka, I am going to turn it over to you. So tonight what we're going to do is Mishka has a lot to present to you. It's also going to be a little bit of a choose your own adventure. I think we're going to get to pick which direction we go to when we leave Gowanus, and then we'll do Q&A throughout if there are good questions, or we'll do it towards the end. So we're going to play it a little fast and loose tonight. Pete asks, now that you've cleaned your home, can you do that tour of it that you once mentioned? Yes. Well, maybe we'll put that on the docket for July. Like I said, it's all books and pictures of Penn Station. All right, Mishka, it's all you. I will see you soon.
Cool. So just want to say hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And a big thank you to Untap New York and Justin for hosting and moderating. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my work with you guys. So I'm going to go through 3 series that I've done in Gowanus over the past 10 years now. I live on the border of Gowanus and Park Slope, so I am a local, have been for quite some time. And yeah, we'll just dive right in. And if you guys have any like burning questions you want to ask, feel free to chat Justin, and I'll be happy to take questions as we go along. Or you can save it for the end. It's kind of up to you. So the first project I'm going to talk about is Gowanus Wild. This is the first project that I did in Gowanus. This is a photo series I shot on nature and wilderness in what's a very industrial. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Gowanus, but it's a very industrial part of Brooklyn, famous for the Gowanus Canal, which is a heavily polluted water body. Gowanus is the site of much industry over the years, from the mid-19th century onwards. And this is the book. So I shot the series in 2012 and 2013, and then it took me several years to put together this book, which I self-published in 2016. But we're going to start at the beginning here. I like to show a lot of process stuff. I figure you guys can see the images online, or you can get the book. But what you can't see is all the behind the scenes stuff. So I like, when I do these kind of talks, I like to kind of show like how everything came about. So I actually moved to the neighborhood in 2008. And I had a car at the time. So I was always parking my car in Gowanus. Gowanus used to be a great place to park your car, by the way. Lots of free space. So when I walked at home at night, I would just see all these like weird, kind of eerie industrial, vignettes like in the neighborhood. So at first I was just kind of, and this is all film in case you couldn't tell. I was shooting on an old Rolleiflex at the time. So this is all 6x6. so I was just kind of interested in like general cool, eerie industrial scenes. But what I started to notice was that in all the images, these kind of interesting bits of nature started to pop up, and that for an industrial area that this was actually like, um, quite a wild area, literally. So this is one of the first images that I didn't realize was going to be part of the series at the time, but eventually became part of the series. And so the metaphor here was for me was kind of like this is like the dew on grass, like on the trail or something, the sort of industrial version of that. So I kept shooting. This was probably around the time when I started to realize, that I think this was like spring, like early summer, spring 2012. And Gowanus gets this very like sort of humid, overgrown, sort of jungly feel to it, like in the summer. You can see that. So, what am I looking at here? So yeah, even on this one contact sheet, I think there's two, if not three, images that are in the book. So it's kind of unreal how many. This is one of them. This is Gowanus Mist. So this is looking from, I want to say, De Gras, looking into Carroll Gardens. This dead end is actually blocked up right now because of the dredging of the canal. So while this view more or less still exists, that's the church over in Carroll Gardens. You can see peeking out there. You can't actually get to this dead end anymore, which is a real shame. This is looking down Sackett Street. This view actually still exists, almost 100%. I don't think a single thing has actually changed in this, which is pretty rare. This lot is constantly being developed here to the right, or, has for sale signs on it. So for sure it's going to turn into something at some point. And so then I wrote a series of 9 poems for the book. And I'll read this first one to you guys. So night sets and the green canal smooths out a soft promise in umber tones and emerald glass. The city holds its breath. The tides of commerce recede. Fumed paths coalesce through broken gardens. The Gowanus wild lays in wait, admitting those with strong lungs and fine eyes. So the metaphor for me for the series in the book was really that this was like my sort of urban nature walk. I'm a big climber, hiker, backpacker. I spend a lot of time outside the city. And what I started to realize is that these nightly walks of mine in Gowanus were kind of like my nature outlet. Gowanus at the time was extremely quiet, extremely desolate at night. It's not like that anymore. There's of course a lot of bars and restaurants here now, so there's people out pretty much at all hours of the night. But at least at that time, around 10 years ago, it had this very like paradoxically peaceful feeling, for like a cityscape. So the metaphor for me was the same sort of psychological benefits I would get from going on a hike upstate, I was getting from walking around in Gowanus. And that sort of kicked off this working metaphor that I used for the whole series. This is 3rd Street Bridge looking south. So this left part here, parking lot, this is what's now Whole Foods, if you can believe that. These used to be, I believe, coal storage towers. These have all been torn down. This is now a parole center. And the scrapyard is gone to the left, actually, as well. And I actually know the guy who lived on this sailboat, if you can believe it. I showed this image in a show, and a guy comes up to me and he's like, "That's my boat. That's my boat." He still has the boat, but he moved it a little further down the canal. But I love every time I look at this photo, it makes me think of tobacco. I think of like tobacco waters, I think I wrote a poem for this, but I didn't end up including it. Or maybe I did, I can't remember. This is the Coignet building. Another scene that doesn't really exist. Whole Foods is now completely surrounding this building on all sides. And the Coignet building was the model home, if you will, for a French company that made a certain type of cement that was meant to imitate stone. So if you get up close to this, you'll see that it's more of like a concrete texture. It's not actually stone. And the brick was a fake facade. I don't know why somebody thought that was a good idea to put on at the time, but it has since come off and the whole building has been restored to its original condition. But the company failed. Their product didn't really take off in America. And this back lot behind them was, from what I understand, was the factory that made the stone. So this was both the headquarters of the company and also kind of like the model home to sort of show off like what the technology could do. It's still for sale. If anybody has, a couple $1 million lying around, they do not ever seem to be able to sell this thing. And it is now landmarked. This is so I kind of went back and forth in the series. Some are more abstract, some are more literal. I have a film background. I've worked in film my whole career as an editor, animator, director, all sorts of things. I used to make short films and I've written scripts. So, the way I approach photography, I think, is very much with a sort of like storytelling cinematic eye. It's like I have wides and closes and kind of, grand landscapes and then like little detail shots. So this is clearly one of the more abstract ones. This was the building site of 365 Bond. So this was a lot that had just a lot of random junk in it, a lot of like old, tractor trailers and stuff. And then they boarded the whole thing up, and this was just kind of in transition at the time. This tree is still here, interestingly enough. So and the light is like a fixed light on a garage across the street. So the light and the tree still exist. So you could technically go track down the same shadow, which I think is kind of interesting. One of the cool things about shooting at night is if you do any photography yourself, when you shoot during the day, you're constantly battling the sun. The sun obviously moves literally every single second. So, the clouds come and go, or you're trying to get, dawn or sunlight. The kind of beauty of shooting at night is the light basically never changes. You have like absolutely fixed light for, whatever, 6 to 8 hours of the night. So it kind of frees you up in a way of, not kind of like rushing against the weather so much. This was actually in the shadow of Whole Foods, right by that Coignet building shot that I just showed. I biked by this and I did a double take. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was like fake or something, but it basically sums up the metaphor of the series. That this kind of beautiful sunflower would be sprouting from like literally a pile of like moldering junk and like coffee cups and God knows what's in there. Another sort of abstract one. This is, I think this was like a trash truck or something that was parked on the side of the street. I guess you could say it's not technically nature, but I don't know. To me, it's like the snow. I mean, I love snow. I love winter. I'm a huge winter person. So something about the snow, it just spoke to me as like nature kind of overwhelming the industry, or overwhelming the metal, overwhelming the kind of the built landscape, if you will. This is looking down Third Ave from, let's see here, like around that Sackett Street, like in the background, I think. Sadly, this tree no longer exists. But yeah, at a certain point, I realized I wanted to do all 4 seasons. So that was kind of like another metaphor for the series. So like spring, summer, fall. And as it turns out, to shoot spring is very difficult because we really only have flowers in the city for about 2 weeks. And if there's any kind of rainstorm or thunderstorm or wind, which there often is at that time of the year, all the petals blow off, or most of them do. And then your kind of window for shooting spring becomes even shorter. So I think I missed it 1 year, and then I was very psyched to get a couple good, photos that read as spring the next year. So this was the site of 365 Bond, which is this massive tower, probably the largest condo building in the neighborhood, and was, what I was referring to in the previous shot. So this was just like a really strange area. There was all kinds of like weird junk in here, and it was used for all sort of like transitory purposes. And then this flower bed in the foreground was actually the Gowanus Canal Conservancy's project. So if you don't know, Gowanus Canal Conservancy is a big nonprofit organization that stewards environmental issues around the canal. And I've worked with them over the years, or through this project, their director actually wrote a really awesome essay for the book. And they kind of helped me out, and I've done stuff for their fundraising and all that kind of thing. So they're a really awesome organization that's working hard to, do good things with the environment in the neighborhood. I'm not even sure if this building exists anymore. I think it might have gotten torn down. But yeah, I went by this. I went by this wall in like, I don't know, August or July of that year, or maybe September, and the vines were all green, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, I love the way it's growing over this graffiti. But I had sort of like bookmarked it in my mind that to come back for fall, and then sure enough, like about a month later, fall hit, and the leaves just turned this like insanely bright red. And something about this makes me think of. I know this is going to sound so funny, but I think of that cartoon Conan the Barbarian that I watched as a kid. I'm like, it feels like the apocalypse, it feels like this like fallen world that this is like and I don't even know what this graffiti is. Like, for all I know, this is some tag has some meaning that's like, totally not something I should be putting in a book. But I like that I don't know. I like that it's like this weird, strange code that feels like from another civilization or another world. But nature is taken over. This one's called Red Piers. This is from the Kell Street Bridge. This is kind of like totally torn out. All these trees in the back have been torn out recently. The EPA actually just tore out these pilings because they're dredging the canal. This was a matter of some controversy because the pilings are kind of associated with the Carroll Street Bridge, which is right next to it. But yeah, I love this shot. It makes me think of Holland for some reason. I almost feel like I could be in like some canal in like rural Netherlands. It's like I would never guess that this is Brooklyn. This is on the banks of Lowe's parking lot. I have no idea where they put a park here. It's like the most absurd kind of place for a park. I suspect that it was something like, Lowe's couldn't get permission to build on this site unless they agreed to like put some public space or something there for like the city, one of those kind of deals. I've never seen anybody actually like hanging out in this park. But I love how this shot sort of feels like, if you can squint your eyes, it sort of feels like, Paris on the left side, and then like, Gowanus on the right. It's like this kind of absurd combination of these wrought iron, gaslight looking lights, and then this crazy tug here. And then interestingly, I met a guy once who drives these tugs, and he told me, which I had never noticed in all these years, that there's two decks. So if you look at, there's like a first deck, like halfway up, and then there's a second bridge rather. There's a second bridge all the way up, and they use the second bridge at the very top when they get in close to the piers. So they have like a better view to like look down, which I thought was pretty cool. This is kind of one of the more headlining images of the series, Spring Tangle. This sadly does not exist anymore. They ripped out this tree. This is at the end of Huntington Street on the Carroll Garden side. And then I wrote a poem for this one as well. The end of an alley, a proposition, a trap, a place to stand and think, to confront a giant weed, a thicket, a bramble, a mess of chalk twigs, choking the senses, sprouting, exploding suitcases, foam cups, ragged clothes, and now the white blossoms, which offer a whisper of hope, a spring tangle that snaps away at the thwap of a plastic bag to crown it all. And yeah, this alley was famous in my mind for random dumpings. People would come here and you'd find all kinds of crazy stuff, like suitcases and old appliances. And it was also sort of like the downhill slope of this street. So it was almost as if like all the rain and everything would just like wash all this garbage like down to the end of here as well. It was just always a very surreal location. And then interesting, well, this is the Kickstarter I did for the book, obviously, but just as a side note, the egret in this tree is actually that tree, which is kind of funny. So yeah, I did a Kickstarter for the book in 2015, which was really great. There's like a whole side story of to me of Gowanus as a community and how much like the neighborhood is such an awesome arts community. I gave away these little like outtake mini prints, so everybody who pledged for the book got a little print, which was really cool. This is GCC, Gowanus Canal Conservancy, at one of their events. So they were helping me raise money for the book. This was an early cover of the book. This is me doing all the proofs. This was like a very extensive process to, when you work with the printer, you send them sort of your like master prints, and then they try to match them as closely as possible. They send you back proofs. And you have to try to, keep tweaking them until they get closer. Then there's picking out all the materials, like the fabric, and I ended up going with like a paper thing for the cover, the foils. It's a really huge process. And then this is the result. I got, 1,000 books shipped to me on a giant pallet in Gowanus. I was able to use Gowanus Canal Conservancy's industrial address because I couldn't, as you might not be shocked to learn, you can't have 1,000 books like delivered to your home in Park Slope. So yeah, that's the book. And if you guys are interested, you can pick up a copy at gowanuswildbook.com. And as Justin mentioned, there's a coupon code that I gave you guys that is good for, I think, 20% off. I think I did it. So yeah.
Yes. And I'll put it in there again. So before we move on, you want to we can take questions about Gowanus if you would like.
Yeah, if anybody has any burning questions, feel free. I'll take like maybe one or two, and then I should probably,
because I think we're gonna go into the next.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna run out of time. I'm right on time right now. So
okay, so if you want to keep
I'm
going,
not doing too bad. But
does anybody have any questions about Gowanus before we move on to? Are we going to Dyke?
No. Still in Gowanus for a while.
Oh, we're still.
Don't worry, you'll get plenty. Yeah, you're getting plenty of Gowanus.
Okay.
I'm not gonna shortchange you on the Gowanus.
Oh, good. All right. So then, why don't I let you keep going?
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So that is Gowanus Wild. So the next project, we're going to jump around a little bit. This is now current day. This is the most. So that was the first project I worked on Gowanus. This is the most recent project. So I started a project documenting Gowanus industrial landmarks, and this was inspired by the Gowanus Landmarking Coalition. This is their site here. My friend Brad Fogel, he's all the way on the left, whom I've known for a while. I saw at one point that he put out a list with the Landmarking Coalition of like 29, 27 buildings or something like that they had earmarked for, trying to fight to get them landmarked. And the like photographer, filmmaker part of my brain was like, that looks like a really great shot list. What if we just go down and like shoot photos of all those buildings? Pretty simple. Of course, I figured out a way to make it extremely complicated. But yeah, that was the initial inspiration for this project. I've always been into whatever you want to call it, architecture, urban fabric, built kind of world, and old things, so this kind of like hit, and Gowanus, of course, so this, hit a bunch of notes for me. And then the kind of other angle that I came at it from is I'm a big postcard sort of fanatic. This is a postcard. It's actually from near where I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, where we had a lot of antique shops and a lot of postcards readily available. And I've just always loved this sort of quality of the image. These most postcards that you see kind of this style are from around turn of the century, like 1905, 1910 to 19 teens. That are often hand colored, hand tinted, or they use these color processes that are no longer used or even available because they were proprietary and the technology was lost. And then also just old photography in general, like this is, I can't say for sure that this was shot on glass plate, but it's quite possible that it was given its age. But just these really kind of like formally strict like architectural photo from the time. And then kind of combining the two, as I'm sure you guys have seen, this kind of like genre of architectural photography postcards, where the image just kind of becomes like an icon, or almost like a like a relic of some sort. It's just becomes very iconic and very sort of graphic, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. So I kind of took all those influences that I just mentioned and kind of combined them into, oh, one more slide, I forgot. And then I had also been looking at, I was aware of old photos of Gowanus. So this is actually the Carroll Street Bridge on the left. If you sort of look hard, you can see the actual bridge on the right. I'm sorry, on the right. And then the rails you can see in the middle. That's actually where it slides. You can see the little control house in the middle. And then on the right is the Gowanus Flushing Tunnel pump house, which actually looks more or less exactly the same today. So I was aware of like old photography of Gowanus, which had always intrigued me as well. And so I sort of combined all those influences into this series documenting the Gowanus industrial landmarks, but shooting them on glass plate photography. So this is a 5x7 glass plate. And then I've combined it with, we're playing. So this series is very much in progress. I'm maybe, I don't know, halfway through it. It's definitely ongoing. So these are all sort of like my half formulated thoughts as I go along. And I've always been into how, there's writing on postcards, like what they call the real photo postcards, or RPPC is how you'll see them abbreviated online. So I've started playing around with writing, captions for the images, not actually on the negative because that'd be kind of crazy. I don't want to completely bake them in, but combining them in Photoshop and layering them and stuff. So this kicked off a whole giant like technical exploration. As you've seen, I have shot analog photography before. I mean, I've shot film, since I was a kid, like my whole career. But I had never really shot that much large format, and I hadn't really shot architecture on large format. So believe it or not, I got this camera for like, oh geez, I don't know, like $125 on eBay. I mean, nobody wants these things, probably for obvious reasons. They're extremely heavy and clunky. And then I also had this one has a binocular viewer on it, so you don't have to look at the image upside down, which is quite handy. And then this giant bag thing is for shooting architecture because you need to move the two standards, what they call the two standards or planes, relative to each other to correct for the verticals, to keep the verticals straight. So first I was playing around with shooting film. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. These are all actually different black and white films, developing everything at home, in my bathroom, classic setup. This is all just developing by Trey. And then, yeah, this is what I settled on, 5x7 glass plate. This is Gowanus Station. This is a building that the city owns that's been used for, like sanitation type purposes over the years. It's currently slated to get destroyed because of the cleanup of the canal. The EPA and the city have been going back and forth about this, but it does look like it will in fact be taken down, sadly, within the next year. There's some plan to like try to save the facade of it, and that they might save portions of the facade. It has this kind of beautiful orange terracotta, like ceramic work on all these details up here at the top. But this is kind of right at the top of Gowanus on Butler and Nevins. This is the Carroll Street Bridge. This is landmarked. This is actually, I believe, the neighborhood's first landmark, like late 1980s. And if anyone's interested in any of these, the ones that are landmarks, the Landmark and Preservation Commission, the LPC, has very extensive designation reports, like when they landmark something. So there's like these like 30-page PDFs that you can go and read that have like, everything about these things in like excruciating detail. But this, I believe, is one of only 2 retractable drawbridges left in the country. I think there's one in Queens also. As you can see here, there's like rails on the bottom, so the whole bridge kind of slides diagonally. And the bridge right now is actually seeing quite a lot of use. Because the EPA is currently dredging, they're like constantly opening this bridge back and forth. So I hadn't really seen it used like at all much over the years, and lately I see it opening and closing like almost every other day. But yeah, I love I don't know. This one in particular I really love because I don't know, it just like fools the eye. You know, if I didn't know better when I first saw it, I would think it really is from like the 1880s or 1890s. But then, you know, of course, you can start to pick out the modern buildings in the back. And um, so, yeah, the logic for me for shooting this is I should talk a little bit about the glass plate. So, glass plate photography was essentially what the first photography was all shot on. You know, first it was wet plate, which is you apply a wet emulsion. It's always wet, but you apply an emulsion to a plate, and then you have to shoot it while it's still wet. You basically have to like dip the plate in a dark room and then put it into a camera and then shoot it within, I don't know what the time frame is, but like minutes, which is of course like very restrictive. And then they came up with dry plate photography, which is you can coat a plate and then let it dry, and then it'll actually stay photosensitive indefinitely. And that, even with all the limitations of photographing on glass, was still like a revolution. You know, you didn't need like to carry an entire darkroom with you everywhere you go. So glass plate was shot up until probably, I don't know, like the 30s or something. Like you could buy a box of plates the way you would buy, you know, a roll of 35 millimeter film, you know, back in the day. And they would come pre-prepared and pre-made by manufacturing processes. So the logic for me is that most of the buildings that I'm shooting are all in like the late 1890s to like 1930s or so. So this is arguably what these buildings would have been shot on at the time. Celluloid film came out, I think, like in the around the turn of the century, but it didn't really catch on until like, you know, much later, like 30s, 40s, something like that. So, you know, early 20th century was definitely a lot of glass plate photography. And that to me just speaks to me. I like something about trying to capture these buildings with kind of the technology of their time. This is the S.W. Bound Grain House, which was on Smith Street in Red Hook. This was a massive warehouse. It was really, really cool. Other people have shot pictures of the interior over the years, like Nathan Kensinger. You should definitely check out some of those photos. They're really interesting. But sadly, there was a arson fire. I think it was like around, must have been 2019 or 2018, and this was in 2019 when it was starting to get torn down. So I don't think it's officially proven, but most people accept that, you know, somebody started a fire in this in order to hasten its removal. You know, various people were trying to get this building landmarked before that happened. And of course, you know, once it's derelict, there's no more reason to landmark it. And that whole process comes to a halt. It's now been completely destroyed. My understanding is they're building some type of last mile warehouse there, like a Amazon type warehouse. Interestingly, it'll be another warehouse, just more modern. But I love the way this image to me feels like a ruin, you know, like in the sense of like one of those classic like Roman ruin paintings, you know. It's just like this kind of like sad last, you know, bulkhead of like another age or another civilization, you know, kind of standing on its last legs. And this is the National Packing Box Factory. This is an artist building that is all artist studios now. This is on the corner of Nevins and Union. This one, obviously, the game is up as soon as you see the cars. It's very, very much more modern. This is the ASPCA building. This was the, you know, Association for Society of Prevention for Cruelty to Animals, which I don't know when they vacated the building, but this has not been the ASPCA for quite a while. It's now a record shop and cafe. This was landmarked recently, so Brad with the Gowanus Landmarkings Coalition recently got 5 new buildings landmarked within the last couple years, including the ASPCA. So that was a huge win for them, and just a great, you know, shows and proves that, you know, civil activism, you know, citizen activism really can make a difference. You know, these guys went out and fought hard. You know, they care about the neighborhood, they care about the history, they care about, you know, the heritage that's in Gowanus. I know it may sound funny to save industrial heritage. Most people are more concerned with public buildings or private residences, that sort of thing. But Gowanus has a very long, somewhat conflicted history of industry, but I would argue a very proud history of industry. I'll stay here for a sec. I think of Gowanus as like the home, it was like the 19th century Home Depot of Brooklyn, like all the brownstone that built all of Brooklyn, it all came through Gowanus, all that stuff was brought in by barge and then, trucked up literally the hill of Park Slope, to build all these buildings. So this is just an example of when you look at these old postcards, you might notice that the skies are never photographic. And that's because when you shoot glass plate photography, I guess actually, I might have used a filter on this one. Here, the sky did come out, but very often the skies will blow out and you just get white because of the emulsion is what's called orthographic, which means it only responds to certain spectrums of light. And most notably the blue, it tends to, the blue will blow out into white, the blue skies. So that's why you almost always see old postcards will have the skies drawn in. So these were often like drawn by illustrators, and the postcard makers would keep like stock plates of skies that they would then composite into the different postcards. So I started playing around with that myself. This is like, I didn't go too heavy on it, but this is actually a separate plate of to shoot the clouds. You need to shoot with like a different filter, like an orange or yellow filter, and that helps bring out the skies a little bit more. So this is the Old American Can Factory. This was also landmarked recently through Brad and the Landmark Coalition's efforts. But interestingly, just this center portion is landmarked. If you kind of notice, it's this center square part that sort of sticks out more. That was the original building, and then these two wings were added later in the late 19th century. It's a beautiful building. And this is all artist studios and kind of fabricators and companies. It's a pretty big mix of people in there. So yeah, getting to all the kind of behind the scenes camera stuff. This is, so yeah, you saw the 4x5 camera, and then I realized, 4x5 for a variety of reasons is kind of like a little bit not an ideal format. Whereas if you go just a little bit bigger to 5x7, it's easier to see. You have like a bigger ground glass. You get more detail. Like the tonality is just that much better without being that much more expensive or that much more unportable. It's still like a relatively small camera. 8x10 is like insane. 8x10 is like so expensive and just a huge pain in the ass, and just a massive leap in complication. But unfortunately, it's very expensive to buy a modern day 5x7 camera that will shoot architecture, because you need what's called a bag bellows. That's what this big bag is. So basically, again, I took a $175 camera I think I spent this time. This is an old wooden Birkin James camera. So I took off the bellows. You can see it in the back here on the left, this red bellows. And then I bought like another bag bellows on eBay for like, I don't know, $50. Like basically nobody wants it. Most of this stuff, it's all completely obsolete. And through much trial and error, I managed to like, glue and epoxy this bag bellows thing in. And then you can see on the right here, I think I was actually photographing the church in Carroll Gardens. So I needed to like really extreme movements. Basically, if you take a camera and you tilt it back to look up at something, all the lines are going to converge, and you'll get like nasty diagonals. But if you take a view camera and you move the front standard vertical, that will project, it's projecting an image onto the back plane. So you're essentially, if you're projecting the image here and then you slide the back down or the front up, it's like you're sampling a different part of that image circle without changing the perspective at all. So that keeps all of the verticals, parallel to each other. And then, of course, I'm shooting with a very wide-angle lens here. This is just the camera from the back. You can see that's what the ground glass looks like. It's quite large. Of course, everything is flipped upside down. The trick I came up with is I just got like a, $2 plastic mirror, and actually just holding that up underneath the dark cloth works perfectly well. And it's not for focus, it's just for composition. With focus, you're going to use a little magnifier. And this is the dark cloth, which is white on the outside so you don't fry to death in summer sun. Then everything goes in a little wheelie case and my little step stool so I can get high enough to look into this thing. And it's all pretty manageable. You'd be surprised at how quickly I can set it up and take it down. And I don't know, there's just something really interesting and cool about shooting in these old techniques, because you realize it's not about speed, it's not about getting a ton of images. It's about like paying attention and crafting each one. These are the plates. So this is this awesome dude, Jason Lane in New Hampshire. He makes these plates and sells them. So you can actually buy them now, just like you would have in the old days. And then these are the holders. For the most part, nobody really makes glass plate holders anymore. So there's a couple of people that are trying or starting to, but your best bet is often to buy original ones. So these are literally like anywhere from 80 to like 100-year-old. Some of them leak light. Like there's a little trial and error to them. It's definitely a little bit of a pain. But again, you can get these things for like, I don't know, like $20, $15 sometimes, because outside of collectors, nobody really wants them. This is the actual plate. This is yet another complication. You can't put them in plastic sleeves like you would film, so they all have to get stored in paper sort of envelopes so that the emulsion isn't damaged. And this is the drying rack. I learned that sometimes emulsion is still in the back that you have to wipe off, which I did. Took me a bunch of tries. As you can see here, I kind of left it because it's kind of cool. I don't know. It sort of speaks to the process. But this is what's been termed remnant shanty. This is what is thought to be like, old sort of like worker dwellings or worker housings. One of the last left examples of this type of building in Gowanus. And this area was, kind of like workers slum, or workers, kind of like squatterville, if you will, back in the day. This is all my, catalog so far. I've been going through. Interestingly, this project depends greatly on light, so I've become a student of the sun and like what direction and what season. I've cataloged all the buildings of like what direction do they face and can I shoot them at a certain time of the year. Basically, winter is not very helpful for shooting most of these things. Now is actually the best time because it's almost June 21st, and that's the only time you can shoot some of the north-facing buildings, because they will get sun, but only for about an hour or two in the morning for a month or two in the summer. So you have to be quick. Just my various contact sheets. And then this is a whole other side of the project, which is what I'm getting to now, which is going to be how I'm going to print them. So I've staked out yet more complicated territory for myself, which is to attempt printing them as platinum prints. And the logic there is similar to the glass plate photography. Platinum printing it's a very beautiful process. It's very rich. The tonality is amazing, but it's also a process that is contemporary with the buildings. So much like the glass plate photography, platinum print paper was sold pre-made at the turn of the century. It was one of the most common, if not the most common, like black and white printing process before silver gelatin came along. And then platinum became very expensive during the wars, World War I and II era, and suddenly it no longer became economically viable to print on platinum. But this thing on the left is a contact printer, so what happens is the negative has to be the same size as your image, and you create your own custom paper. That's why you see these brush marks. You brush on the emulsion, and then you put a negative. In the modern day, we would print this out on acetate, and you sandwich the whole thing together. You expose it with like a UV light or the sun, and then you go through a development process for it. I've also been playing around with, this is platinum on the left with some like coloring techniques I was exploring, and this is what do you call it? Inkjet laser print transfer. So you print on a laser printer, and then you use like a solvent to like push it through the back, and it sort of delaminates from the paper and adheres to this. Penumbra Foundation in New York is where I was taking classes. It's a really awesome place if you want to learn any alternative photography stuff. All right, we're getting there. It's quarter till. I swear to God, this one isn't as long or complicated, so I will probably go a little quicker through this. This is Gowanus Manufacturing Calendar. This is a project I did in 2019 with Uta Zimmerman, who pictured here on one of our shoots. Uta runs the Gowanus Souvenir Shop, which had a physical location on Union Street, but the physical location closed just before the pandemic, unrelated. But Uta still maintains an awesome website at GowanusSouvenirShop.com. You should definitely check it out. And she's just been a big champion for all things Gowanus for many, many years. She's helped a lot of artists and a lot of creators do shows and put stuff on. So when she approached me to do this calendar, I leapt at the chance that I thought it would, be really cool. So basically we went around and shot 12, it wasn't strictly manufacturing, but, makers of some kind in Gowanus. This is AJ Ironworks. This was full bleed printing. I believe they're adhering some photographs to plates here, some type of lamination process. This is Stephen Antonsen. He's an artist that does like plaster sculpture. He does a lot of lighting and kind of interior furnishings type stuff. So this project was like totally different than some of my other projects because we would go around and have like 10 minutes to shoot or 15 minutes to shoot. Uta knew a lot of these people, and we had to be in and out in like 2 seconds. Like most people are busy, they don't have a lot of time. This is definitely not like shooting landscape. I definitely can't bring like a view camera and spend like forever and ever doing stuff. This is Claire Ware Pottery on Union and Nevins. She's been there for a long time. This is Steven at Architectural Grill. It's a huge metal fabricating plant. They do all kinds of architectural metal detailing features and stuff. Really cool shop. Family-run business. We got to meet the whole family. This is Anne from Even Keel. She was inside Uta's shop, and she does soaps and other beauty product type things. I believe a lot of them are handmade. And this was actually cool. This was Gotham Greens. This is the greenhouse on top of Whole Foods. So this was really fun and interesting to get up there and shoot. It was like being in some, I don't know, felt like some sci-fi film, this kind of like biosphere. This is Marble, Onyx, Granite, and Terrazzo. This is another family-run business. They make, I think they import marble and stuff from Italy, and terrazzos and all kinds of cool things. This is a little behind the scenes at the Ironworks and the marble place. It's a little tricky to shoot in some of these places. They're pretty dark, but we managed. And this is Go Greener Plumbing. This is another a lot of family-owned businesses in Gowanus. This is, these guys are on Sackett. This was a fun one. Again, we had very little time to shoot, and we're waiting for the right family members to show up, which they eventually did. And this is the new motor. This is architectural. They fabricate stuff for architecture and whatnot. Architectural designers, interiors. The paper recycling plant down on, Second Ave and 6th Street, which has been there forever and ever. If you've lived in the neighborhood, you always see, forklifts and stuff bringing in all this giant masses of paper. And then everyone's favorite Gowanus company, South Brooklyn Casket Company. This is very prominent on Union Street. You see all these massive signs that say casket, and wonder what the heck is going on. This is yet another family business. This is Michael Pontoni. He made sure that we would get his relative Michael. I don't know if that's his brother or not. His law offices in the shot too. Consummate marketer. I appreciate that. But yeah, this was a fun shoot. Very quick, of course. We just got him in the window. And that's it for the official stuff. I don't know if we want to dive into any quick extra series, or we could spend the last 10 minutes in Q&A. I'm happy. Oh, so the two extra series are, I've been shooting stuff on Diker Heights lights, the Diker Heights Christmas lights, which is a fun one, extremely colorful. And I've also been shooting in Floyd Bennett Field, which is more kind of like urban nature stuff, and also a kind of weird and wacky part of Brooklyn. So you guys can decide amongst yourselves, or we can save the whole time for Q&A. It's up to you.
All right, guys, what do you think? I kind of want to see the Diker lights. Does anybody have a thought? Well, there are two questions came in about Gowanus, so why don't we field those and then take it from there. One of the questions came from Bonnie, I think. And it was, or no, it was does all the development of Gowanus bum you out?
Yeah, it's a complicated question. I mean, I would, the short answer is yeah, it does, because I've lived here for a long time, and I like the old Gowanus, for lack of a better word, but it's a dilemma because I can't be a purist about it. I'm like, you can't live in New York City if you don't like change. You know what I mean? Like that's just like the bottom line. Like if I don't like change, then I'm like, there's no reason for me to live in New York City, because nothing here ever stays the same. And that's just the reality. Does that mean it's not worth fighting for like landmarking buildings and stuff? Absolutely. I think it's totally worth it. A lot of people, myself included, are fighting on various fronts, to make sure the stuff that happens in Gowanus is done as well as it possibly can. While knowing that it's sort of an inevitable tide. And the other sort of dilemma part is on the one hand, I hate all these condo buildings going up everywhere, but every time I'm tempted to bitch about it, I meet somebody who's a friend of mine that lives in one of them. You know what I mean? So there is this very real problem of there's not enough housing, and people got to live somewhere. And then I literally know people living in these buildings, so I can't fully endorse it, and I can't fully dismiss it either. It's a dilemma for sure.
Mitchka, I just muted you so that because everybody's talking about my echo. So when you speak, just unmute yourself. And that's true. So as being somebody who has also been involved in Gowanus for since 2001 and have many friends who live there, moving there in the fall, I absolutely agree. There are so many, things that we lost throughout the years. I mean, there was the Yard, which was a big spot where they put that, gigantic building, and which was a great cultural spot. And of course, like seeing your pictures of pre-Whole Foods, I forgot what Gowanus looked like before Whole Foods. It feels like it's been with us for so long. The other question that came in from Bonnie, do you know the history of the building on Smith and Third? Most recent incarnation was an auto shop / garage. There's some beautiful internal structure revealed through the demolition. And so just unmute yourself now, Mishka.
Smith and Third, I think I know which building you're talking about. It's like the thing that has kind of like a high garage on it. I don't go over there that much, so it's likewise intrigued me. And yeah, I don't know, unfortunately, because it's a little out of my purview. It's a little outside the Gowanus boundaries. I have a very strict focus.
Cool. Any other questions for Mishka on Gowanus? And I think we are definitely going to head into Diker Heights. We got to vote for it. And then after Diker Heights, we can see if we want to do Floyd Bennett or call it a night.
Nice.
Go for it.
All right. So this is Diker Heights Lights. This is a project I've been shooting. over, I don't know, the last maybe 3 years. I can't remember which winter I started shooting it. But yeah, as I mentioned before, I'm a huge like winter nut fan, and I grew up with a mom who was very obsessed with Christmas. We always had like, anywhere from 3 to 5 Christmas trees in the house. I sort of grudgingly went through it as a kid, but also like, kind of loved it, hated it at the time. But there's something about the pageantry of Christmas that I appreciate. It is this kind of like almost like LSD of decorations and lighting and just kind of the obsession behind it, which all comes to a total head in Decker Heights, of course. Um, so yeah, I mean, I just started going there and shooting without any particular like huge agenda. Um, these are some of the early ones. I sort of like, uh, I guess you could say I come from like the Tim Burton school of Christmas. There's something interesting about how Christmas can be sort of dark. I guess because it's winter, it's a dark time of year. Um, the Christmas has this kind of like noir effect to it as well. Um, so a lot of these early ones I think are more. This one's almost like evil. So like evil Black Christmas. Um, so I'm gonna say, and of course I'm shooting at night because it's light because it's the lights. So all those things add to give this sort of like a dark feeling to it. Um, and then I also like these ones. The super crazy LSD ones are fun, but then I also like almost these kind of more intimate ones of. To me, it's not necessarily about who has like the most lights or the biggest display, but just that you know like Christmas decoration is something that everybody can take part in, and even if you put out like the tiniest bit of lighting or tree, you're still kind of like doing something, that kind of furthers people's joy. I think that's to me the theme for the series, um, is joy. It's like this, just this like ecstatic energy. I mean, these things, and then the architecture of Decker Heights is like so crazy as well. You get all these like people have these wacky things like Greek sculptures in their yard and all this like fun stuff. That I don't know. I just love New York. There's so many cultures here and so many styles and so many things going on. And it's just awesome to kind of see it all like collaged on top of each other. Um, this is from this year, so it doesn't snow that much anymore. Oh, it's so frustrating. So this is yet another project that like timing is really sensitive on because obviously I can only shoot it for like 1 month of the year, and am I going to be busy that year and not have a lot of free time? And then on top of that, is it going to snow? Because obviously the snow is the best one. So I don't think we had snow for like 2 years, and this year we got a pretty big snowstorm in December. So that was kind of like drop everything and go head out and get some good shots. Um, this is that main one. I forget what street this is, but this one's like particularly acid. It's that one house that like the woman just has like freaking everything in this massive collage of like Christmas psychosis. um, but yeah, I have a lot of photos for this one at this point. None of these have been seen before, by the way. I mean, there was a few press things over the years that I've done, but a lot of this stuff hasn't been shown yet because I'm still trying to figure out exactly what. So, like, I'm thinking about how much do I want people in it? Like, do I want to shoot maybe the owners of the houses? Do I want to shoot the people? Of course, Decker Heights is a huge like community thing. There's like huge masses of people in the streets at this point, like going on tours and there's a whole public aspect to the spectacle and the lights, which is definitely like a really interesting aspect of it. It's become basically like a massive tourist destination. And these lights are put up by professional decoration companies, so like the really big displays, of course. Um, so it's almost like advertisements for these decoration companies. So they're just like next level. But again, I just kind of like the variety. Some are people's personal efforts. Um, and yeah, the whole thing is just, I don't know, it's so New York. I love it. Um, yeah, I wish there was snow. Why can't we have more snow? Um, But there is something, I don't know, kind of funny, I guess, about the grass and Christmas. You guys want to do Floyd Brennan Field really quick? All right, I'll let me back up. Let me back up. So you want to see Floyd Brennan Field?
Go for it.
Go for it. Okay, cool. All right, so this will be a little quicker probably. So Floyd Bennett Field is, if you don't know it, it's New York City's first airport. It's now it's like a national, it's not a national park. It's the next level down, like a national recreation area. As you can see here, this is one of the old runways, the Giant One. This kind of gives you a sense of like the state of affairs there for the most part. Super interesting place. I really highly recommend checking it out if you ever get a chance. This is some of the old hangars. Parts of it have been repurposed into aviation sports, which is like a big sports complex, on the northern side of the park. But the thing I love about Floyd Bennett Field is there's a little something for everybody. There's a campground. There's a huge remote-controlled flying field, boating, fishing, nature walks. There's a garden. There's archery. This is towards the 1C side. I was just there actually a week ago. The plane is gone. I'm not sure where it went, but there was this awesome old Air Force plane that I think looks like they're draining the oil here or something. They were maintaining it. They have these two giant engines out on the tarmac, which is pretty cool. But people come here to recreate. It's a really interesting place where you just have these massive expanses of concrete, that are perfect for like biking. It's an awesome place to take a bike, play ball, just like, stretch your legs and just get out. And I also can't help but think it feels like an X-Files episode. I've camped there before, and the campground's right here in the background in those trees. When you camp here, it's like you feel like some freaking UFO is gonna like rise up out of the hangars or something, and you can just see this like desolate, like you see the cityscape like off on the horizon and all these like broken sea things. This is the beach right there. It's got a kind of nice beach, and this boat ramp was what they used to launch seaplanes. They would roll the seaplanes down these ramps, and the kayakers use it now. This is like a more developed image of this has been in like another series of mine. But this is, I love basically everything about this photo. The jumbled blocks, the little birds on the top. My girlfriend's there on the side. It's just very jungly. It's all very overgrown. It's got this kind of like very wild mixed with the graffiti and stuff aspect to it. This is some of the larger runway areas, kids playing, the puddles. And then there's tons of drag racing. I mean, I'm not sure what the status is now, but at the time, a couple years ago, they're just like massive drag racing things going on there, which was like right in the middle of the day. And, very not, this is a freaking national recreation area. There's like literally park rangers driving around with like the little flat hats, and they seemingly don't care or don't know. Although last week I started seeing these drag racing strictly prohibited signs. I'm curious how much they're being obeyed. This is hiking through the northern side of the park. The friend of mine, just these really cool sea marshes and reeds and stuff. There's like an old abandoned, I'm not sure what this building was used for, but there's an old abandoned, pretty large building you can mess around in. This is the campground, so you can camp there. You can fish there. There's clearly a very big fishing scene. People on all sides of the park like to get out and fish. And then, yeah, just all this weird, sea trash and stuff. I mean, the theme for me is it feels like this, like, it feels like a shipwrecked island, it feels like this weird island that's like planted in the middle of New York Harbor, that has this strange like castaway feeling to it, that you're just sort of like lost as a castaway on this strange urban sea island, in the middle of the city. So yeah, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
All right, Mishka, I just muted you. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions for Mishka on Gowanus, on Floyd Bennett Field, on the Diker lights, on any of these great topics? These are beautiful photos, by the way. And I'm going to put that code one more time in the chat to save 20% off of Mishka's books when you order from Unnatural Kingdom. Carmen says, thanks for sharing all your great pictures and experiences. I agree. Thank you. Joe Holmes says, yes, beautiful photos. Thank you. This was really, really awesome. Mishka, any final thoughts before I sign off for the evening? Please.
I would just say, get out there and enjoy the city. We live in a super awesome, super wild, crazy, diverse city. And I mean, I've lived here for 22 years and I've never run out of places to explore. So get out there and explore. Get out in nature.
Amen. I agree. Thank you all very much. Again, thank you, Mishka, for bringing this to us this evening. Thank you guys for attending. Just so you know, for those of you who may be new to the format, the replay of this presentation will pop up in your email about 5 minutes after. So you can watch it. If you are an Untapped Insider, I will be editing this and putting it in the Insider archives as well. So you can access them in both of those places. Just so you know, if you catch the replay, the chat is still active and live, so you can get access to all of the places that have been linked throughout the talk, including the to purchase Mishka's books and all of the articles that I had been posting and organizations that we were talking about during the talk. So thank you all very much. I will see you next Thursday for the next series. The next installment in our Lost New York series, which is the Lost Madison Square Gardens, hosted by yours truly. You will notice that throughout the summer, we're probably going more towards a week virtual model as we are bringing in-person experiences back, but we are going to get out and start filming in-person experiences for those of you who are virtual, so that week you can experience those through the archives, and that will start in a couple of weeks. So thank you all very much. Again, thank you, Mishka, and I hope that you all have a wonderful evening or wherever you are. It's bedtime for you guys in London, so it's a little later. Thanks again, and have a good one, everybody.
Thanks, guys. See you. Thanks for coming.